Hello? Check, check. All right. So, I don't think I have anyone here. I think there's like nobody watching right now, but I have it set for DVR, so anyone coming in can check back at the start of this. So, this is a whole long story. It started about a year ago. I think it was, what was it, June 4th? Let me, hold on a second. So I have the chat, like not the chat, but the text messages pulled up my entire text thread with this guy from here, starting June 4th. So, first of all, for anyone who doesn't know, Big Red's Boards was a builder, a battery pack builder originally. It was just Ted Christensen before he became, I guess, a builder for Big Red's Boards. He used to just, I guess, build under his own name. I don't know exactly what the whole timeline of events was before I had actually seen any of this stuff. I just know that he had at one point in time a really, really good holy crap. He had a really, really good, why am I drawing a blank on this word? A really good reputation as a pack builder. I think problems for him started when he decided to expand into overall like board building entire units, not just the battery packs or anything small. Like he started just building entire decks and builds. So I get involved with this guy June 4th of last year, primarily just looking for a battery pack for my board that I wanted to build. I wanted to build like basically a monster electric mountain board, something that was made for specifically all-terrain, like actual legitimate all-terrain, not your like pre-built Chinese, not that there's anything wrong with them. I started off on a Hurricane, Meepo Hurricane, but not that type of all-terrain, because those types of boards, they can handle all-terrain to some degree, but at the same time, there's no bindings. There's nothing that can hold you on the board when you're hitting serious bumps and things like that. And it just bucks you every single time you hit anything more than 2 inches big. Plus, there's somewhat of a limitation to how big you can put, like how big the wheels can be that you can put on those pre-built boards. And it's arguable. Some would say otherwise. But either way, I wanted something with 8 inches or 8-inch wheels minimum. I wanted a very specific deck. I wanted the Hero Bro deck. I had a very specific image in my head of what I wanted this build to be. I wanted a pretty low gear ratio, so it had a lot of torque, specifically for handling off-road conditions, not just something that goes fast on the street. So enter Big Red's Boards, and I believe I found out about them through the Eskate forums, which is right here. This is where I'm at right now. So I threw this up here. Again, it looks like there's still nobody here, which is cool, but at the same time, I really want people to actually see what I'm talking about, because this is like, it's pretty legitimately important. Somebody as a machinist that I have worked with in the past for Eskate stuff, who knows Ted Christensen and knows his work partner, Chris, I don't know what Chris's last name is, who got in touch with Chris today after this discussion had gotten started, which was just on a whim. I accidentally sent something to the machinist that I was speaking to before. And they had stated that they wanted to, I guess, get in touch with this guy too, because he still owes money to this guy. He owes money to a lot of people, this Ted dude. So June 4th, I reach out to this guy, mainly just looking for a pack. So we get into all sorts of different random details about battery size and things. And then later on, I don't know exactly how long into this, like how much time passed before him and I started getting into, what was it? Like decks and stuff like that. At a certain point, he starts telling me that he can get me all the parts that I want for this build at a pretty dramatic discount. According to this guy, he says that he has like an inside, line on all these different vendors, parts vendors and stuff like that. So he convinces me that the best way to go about all this, the cheapest way to go about all this, would be for me to just have him handle the build entirely, more or less, And again, I'm not putting all the blame on him for my bad situation. I should have seen this stuff coming in advance, far in advance. But for whatever reason, it took me way into like actually getting the board almost 6 months after I had originally talking to him before I realized that this was like a massive mistake. And I think shortly prior to that, there was a little bit of time before I had actually gotten the board, where it looked like I was just not going to get it. Like, I think 4 or 5 months in, I'm sitting here bugging him at this point, whereas previously I tried to avoid getting like, on his nerves because he had a very short fuse. He blew up on me in the text chat over something that was completely unrelated to me. He even admitted that it was unrelated to me, and he thought I was somebody else, but he was cussing me out over something I had nothing to do with. And so, I just kind of like didn't want to bother him. But after about 5 months in and not seeing anything from this guy, it became obvious that something was wrong. Maybe I should actually reach out to this dude and start being really persistent about, I need my stuff, because I had sent him thousands of dollars for this build. Maybe later I'll explain the exact total, but it was a lot of money. And in the end, given how much he talked about certain aspects of this, of what was it? Hold on a second. Let me do something here. I got to lower some settings on this because this is like really bright. That looks better. There we go. Much better. Okay, so where was I? What was I talking about? What was the last thing I was saying? I'm reviewing where I was. It was a lot of money, and in the end, given how much he talked about certain aspects of this, what was it? Hold on a second. Let me do something here. I gotta lower some settings on this because this is like really bright. From this guy, it became obvious that something was wrong. Yeah, so 5 months after I had originally commissioned this is when it started to become very obvious to me that there was some issues. I had sent him like 3 or 4 installments of a couple $1,000s each installment, $1,000 here, $2,000 there. Trying to get this thing built. The most expensive part of this thing obviously was the battery. It was a 14S8P battery pack. So as you can see, that's quite a few cells that are in there. It's pretty expensive. I don't think you're going to find a builder that's going to sell that for much less than what he was selling it for. And so either way, he had talked me into going through him for the entire build. And originally it was just going to be, I was going to get all the parts from him. And then it turned into like, well, hey, let's just we'll put your board together and send it to you all, in a nice little package, and all you have to do is open the box and get on it. You can write as much as you want. You don't have to worry about putting it together, which for me, I'm kind of a tinkerer. I like putting things together. I like taking things apart. I like modifying things. I like buying stronger versions of an existing part, replacing that existing part with a stronger version of it. I'm not somebody who prefers to just have something completely pre-built sent to me. I like to make an existing thing that's already cool even cooler by putting cooler parts on it. And so, yeah, I had no issues with building this thing on my own if it came to that, and that was originally what my plan was. But he kind of made it alluring not having to work, because at the time, I think it was like in a really busy part of my my work, like the season that I was in at the time was incredibly busy. And so I figured, well, maybe I should just let him put this thing together for me, because I don't know how much time I'm going to have to actually work on it. And I don't want this to turn into one of these things where it's like this nifty little project that you put to the corner for a minute, and then you're like, I can't find the time to get back to that, but I promise I'll get back to it. And then a week later, you're still looking at it like, well, I will get back to it. I'll get back to it. And then like a month or two goes by, and suddenly you're like, I guess I'm just going to have to like hold off on this altogether for a while. I didn't want it to turn into something like that, where it just became a part of the scenery, the parts and stuff. So the idea of him building this thing for me was actually kind of alluring and acceptable. And I decided, you know what, fine, I'll just have you guys build it for me. I figured it was going to cost a little bit more than just simply having them send me the parts. And it did. It actually cost me significantly more, although according to him, speaking to others and to me, he only charges basically what he pays for these things. He claims that he basically just tries to make little to no money on the actual thing. He likes to make things, as he says in later texts to me. So I will say there was not really much in the area of trying to upsell anything, because I really do think that he was selling me things not wholesale price necessarily, but not also not at the point where he was getting any sort of a serious return on whatever money he was making from me. I think that it was fairly obvious that he really didn't know how to make this a very big, profitable endeavor, which the more I started talking to him, the more it felt to me like this is just not the kind of line of work anyone looking to make a lot of money wants to get involved in, because there really isn't a lot of money in this, because the parts are so expensive, especially when you get into the high-end builds, that there is just zero profit incentive unless you're willing to charge an amount of money that nobody's willing to spend on a build. It's like some of these, the truth of the matter is, if you want to spend $2,000 on a board, you're going to have to go with like a pre-built Chinese setup, $2,000 or less, because that's the only thing you're going to find in that price range that's actually viable for riding, because China just sells everything fairly cheap because they manufacture fairly cheap. So if you want a local American vendor / builder to make you something worth riding, something that you want to brag about to people or whatever the case may be, you're going to spend a lot of money. That's all there is to it. There's no way around it. I think $3,000 is probably like your minimum amount that you're going to have to spend if you want a decent board built from an American company in the United States, an American company in the United States. That's just all there is to it. So I kind of came to terms with that early on, and I was fine with spending more money through them. That was not the issue. The issue came down to timeline initially. Then later on, the issue became how destroyed the board was when it got to me, and how it was literally not functional. I could not actually just get on the board and ride it in the state that it was in when I received it. So, fast forward to, I think it was, let's see, let's go all the way down. So this is the whole thread. So this is October 20th. We're talking about him shipping it out. So first of all, just so everyone can see, this is what my board actually looks like. This is my board that he took a picture of when it was still in his possession. And this is after he finally got it built. This is October. Or no, this is November 2nd. He sent this out. I commissioned this board to be built June, was it 4th? June 4th, 2022. And here we are, October 2nd. It's still in his possession. And he was playing this game where it was, oh, it's going to be out tomorrow. It's going to be out tomorrow. We swear it's going to be in the mail. It's going to be in the mail. Oh, we're shipping. Oh, we're really busy. We're trying to get it out, but we can't. Well, the problem is, and what I can tell happened, is that he had no idea how he was going to package this thing. The reason I know that is because when it arrived, it was packaged by, like, in a way that looked like, the person who packaged it had no idea what they were doing. So, so that's clearly what was going on. So November 2nd. In fact, man, I could go through this entire text thing, and I actually would love to. But where was it? Signature required. So November 4th, November 8th is when it arrived. to me. Two glaring issues. Two front mounting points on the pack have stripped out, leaving the whole pack floppy on the rear two mounts. The other issue is street side skin, or the issue is the street side skin is upside down. Now, the skin that I'm talking about there is the graphic that I had them put on the bottom. I haven't connected a remote to this or anything. I'm not sure how you deal with issues like this, so let me know what I should do. So notice the dates. So we got November 8th here. And as you scroll down, still November 8th, November 9th. It's been a day. He hasn't responded back yet. Oh, yeah. These are some issues I found with the battery pack. I'm assuming this is like one of the balance cables, maybe even the ground for the balance, that has been frayed. It's because of the way that he jammed it into the case. It was kind of haphazardly. He wasn't really too concerned about not damaging anything, trying to put it together. And I'm assuming it's because he was in a hurry once he realized how frustrated I was that it still was not in my possession after 5 or 6 months. So I'm asking these questions. It's the 9th. So finally he responds back, 9:20 p.m. This is like, I think 24 hours after I'd originally messaged him about it. After receiving it, he goes, crazy, it worked perfectly before you took everything apart. So this right here is him immediately trying to force the blame onto anyone except himself for the piece of shit that he sent me. Is basically what it is. And at the time that I received it, it was a piece of shit. It was not turning on. The battery pack was flopping around, and I will show the video of me opening this thing up. Now, here's the thing. Some may ask, why has it taken so long for myself to actually come out and say something about this? I received the board about a week before the snow had started in Michigan to where I couldn't ride it. I was able to ride that thing after getting everything fixed on it. Keep in mind, I had to fix a number of things. But after getting everything fixed on the board, I was able to ride it twice in the amount of time that I had it before I had to put it up for the winter. Again, I had commissioned this thing to be built 6 months prior, thinking it was going to take 2 months, maybe 3 months to have it built. I had no part of me assumed that it was going to take 6 months for this thing to get built. Not for 1 second did I ever assume that when I originally commissioned it. If I had known that it was going to take 6 months to get built, I would never have spoken to this dipshit in the first place. Ever. Never would have talked to this guy. I never would have spoken to this guy. So, but 6 months later, hindsight being 2020, and there's nothing you can do about this at this point. I've got this board, and it's in a complete state of just filth. Literally, when I opened the box, there were wrappers from Five Guys and like other places in there that he had used for packing material. So he had taken fast food to-go bags and he stuffed them in the box because he needed packing material. So literally he used trash to pack this board, which explains why the battery pack was flopping about on it. So let me kind of go to my my previous video that I put up. Let me go to it here. And this is actually straight up entitled, Do Not Buy from Big Red's Boards, or Ted Christensen. So we're just going to play this. So keep in mind, this was immediately after I had unboxed this video, or this board. I had just taken this thing out of the box. This is right next to my office. I had shoved everything into the office, all the packing material. And I'm going around just looking at a couple things. A company out of Colorado just came in today. I've had this thing for about 5-10 minutes out of the box. Going over everything. The only thing I didn't order from them was a remote, which I haven't installed yet. I have the remote that I ordered separately. I just haven't put the receiver in yet or anything. So a couple of things to note. A big one here is this. Let me see if I can turn that light on. So this right here, these are the mounting bolts, the inserts that Ted at allegedly put into this board himself, according to him. Now, I had spoken to another vendor who has worked with Ted in the past, who at the time was under the impression that Ted was a decent guy, was a decent vendor, who looked at this and said, wow, whoever put those in didn't do it right. And he could see it right away. I took some other pictures overhead, like how deep they were shot into this board. And according to this guy, what they had done wrong is that you were supposed to drill all the way through the board to put these inserts in. And he had only drilled partially through. Obviously, he didn't want to punch through the bottom of the board. I'm guessing that was his reasoning. So this thing was not secure. There was no way that this was rideable in this state.
Right out of the box.
You can see, like, it just lifts right up.
So that's something that can be claimed was a shipping issue.
So yeah, that's what I said there, was that it could be a shipping issue. Clearly, if they had not actually installed this stuff properly and something breaks in shipping, they can easily just blame the shippers. They can blame UPS, they can blame FedEx, whoever that was, for their inability to actually install things properly on these boards. And knowing what I know about this guy now, it would not surprise me in the least if I found out that this had happened while the board was still in his possession, maybe even while he was packaging the board himself. And he just said, fuck it, like, I'm just putting it in here. Whoever wants to, like, you know, deal with this after the fact, I'll insure it or whatever. You know, it's not my problem anymore once it's out of the house. So it's very well could have been that. And I think that actually was probably the case. I think he really did break these things at his shop and just still shipped it out this way, which is disgusting. But the reason why I think he did that, and the reason why I think it's entirely possible that he shipped these things out completely inconsiderate of, let me turn the volume down on my mic a little bit because I think I'm peaking. So I think the reason why it's very possible or likely that he willingly did these things is the fact that he knew he was shutting down the shop. Like, he knew it was coming to an end really, really soon. There were a number of other people in the forums talking about how he still has not shipped them items that they had sent him to modify, and they had paid him to modify these things. So this guy was receiving all sorts of things. He was at the end of his rope here with his company and decided, I'm done. I just need to get this out of here, and I'm moving to Utah. That's literally what it came down to. So you may be asking yourself, well, why are you making a video now? The guy's company is no longer around. You've obviously settled with the idea that you're not going to get anything from these people. You know, Ted's not going to send you a new deck. Chris isn't going to send you a new deck. What do you want out of this? I don't really know what I want out of this. I think more or less what needs to happen is people need to know what to look for in a vendor so as not to make mistakes like this, like I made, because I'm not going to say that I'm the most intelligent person out there who just made a mistake that I need to let everyone know about. I'm pretty stupid when it comes to some of this stuff, especially because at the time, I think I had only been involved in Eskate for like 7 or 8 months, maybe. Like this, I'm going on like my second year of being involved with this. So, you know, I really wasn't sure what to look out for in terms of vendors. And everybody I ran into online knew who Ted Christensen was, knew who Big Red's Boards was, and they were aware that at the time he was a reputable vendor. He was somebody you could trust to build a good battery pack, which is why after I vetted him for a little while, I decided this is the guy I'm going to go through for my pack. But I think I caught him at a bad time. I think everyone caught him at a bad time at this point because he was ate up. He was not capable of dealing with people in a business like this, especially owning his own business, when it all comes down on him, when he's the one that it's all falling down on, and he's the one in charge of all the money that's coming in, and he can't control himself with that money, and he goes out and does certain things with that money that, you know, allow his company to fall apart. You know, when this happens, it's his fault, and that kind of stress is not manageable for some people. Very clearly not manageable for some people. I mean, he apparently was losing it at this point in his business right before I got him to ship me this thing, which I'll say right now, I was one of the lucky ones here because there were quite a few people who did not get what they paid for at all. Like, they sent him a bunch of money and he just never returned any calls and never returned any messages. He just walked out. He ghosted. He took cash and left. And that's it. And still there are people that have no idea where he is. They haven't heard from him. And I have his what do you call it? I actually have his phone number. But he's kind of a crazy dude. Like, he legitimately scared me when he blew up on me at one point. I'm thinking, this is the kind of guy that will show up on my doorstep if I say the wrong things about him somewhere, or if I try to voice my concerns to anybody about him. Well, I was reassured that that's not very likely to happen, since the guy has no money anymore. He had to dissolve his company and left, so he's got nothing at this point, according to this dude. So either way, back to this vid.
I don't know.
So I don't think at any point in time during this video, I don't think I ever attempted to turn this board on in this video, which is sad, because I think I was able to get it to turn on out of the box, but there was something wrong with the button. I noticed right away, and that it would flicker. The light on it would change colors in a way that was not consistent with anything, or it was, like it was doing it through some programmed thing. It was clearly an intermittent connection somewhere that was loose. Oh my God, it's going to give me a seizure. So here, check this, what they did with the skin.
Want to send me photos because
And I'll clarify here, because in the video I say, I'll let you decide what's wrong with this. I'll clarify when it comes out.
Quote, loves to make his clients suffer, or he likes to torture his clients. I don't remember his word. He was making a joke.
I apologize for my kids' shoes that are in this video all over the place.
Yeah, so I didn't want the skin originally on this thing. I just wanted the bare board. I was going to put some vinyl on it.
He brought up skinning this thing about a dozen times. He kept talking about, we do a great job skinning boards. We do really good skin jobs.
I really didn't want to spend the extra $300 that he ended up charging me for this, because I just didn't see the need for it if I could just throw vinyl on it and replace it anytime it got scratched. But after he brought it up the fourth or fifth time, we finally said, yeah, sure.
Fast forward to it.
In my opinion. Yeah.
So here, you'll notice
Getting his buddy
the biggest issue with this skin.
put this skin on, and I will let you be the judge of what's wrong.
So I'm going to say it in a second in the video, but notice this is standing on its back wheels. So this is standing what would be considered vertical, like straight up and down. Right side up, you would say. If it were standing against a wall, this is the way that you would stand it against the wall, except the street side of the board would be facing the wall more than likely. So notice, you can already see there's a couple major glaring issues here with imperfections, but the biggest thing you notice is that it's upside down. So I would say that is a kind of a big screw up, in my opinion. And the reason why is I want to say, and I could be wrong, well, for one,
In the skin.
no matter what, I mean, like, I would have to swap everything around if I wanted to flip this board around. But the other thing is, I don't think... Yeah. The binding mounts are not like omnidirectional. It's not like you can flip it around and then install the bindings like the way you need them in any given direction that it's in. So like I would have to completely, if I wanted to flip this board around, I don't know. I don't even know if I think it's possible, but
Closer.
I'd have to look at it
see a lot
in
of
greater detail. So notice,
Imperfections in the
look at all these bubbles.
skin.
Look at this.
All over the place.
This is like filthy. This is disgusting. He charged $300 to do this. $300. You see that? That bubble that it popped?
I mean, that looks like a bubble.
Yeah, I'm pointing at the one that popped. This one up here. Right there. Look at that.
Turn the flash off. You can see a better
Horrendous.
ambient light.
So the other thing is that this skin is embossed. He put something behind the skull. You can kind of tell
So many imperfections.
it's raised. You can kind of see the embossing. You see that right there? What's going on? Getting messages here. So you can see, the reason why I bring up this embossment thing and why it sucks is the fact that my original plan was not to have this skinned. My original plan was to just throw vinyl on it. I was going to get a specific type of vinyl that was going to go on the bottom. I was going to get a different type of vinyl to go on top. And I had it in my mind. I literally had it envisioned in my head how I wanted this to look. This was not it. After he had convinced me, he'd shown me other examples of these skins that came out that were like really, really cool. It occurred to me that I wanted to make my own design, which is what this design was. And the guy that did the resin on this screwed it up so bad, it makes me hate the design that I made. like I made this design and it looks like ass after he did this. And I think it's because there was a number of things. He told me himself that he screwed this up. He admitted it. The guy, it wasn't Ted that did the skin. It was Chris that did the skin. And Chris admitted to me that he screwed this up. He said it over the phone. He said it on Instagram. I want to say he said it like 3 or 4 times. And according to him, he told Ted that he told me that he screwed it up. And Ted was pissed that he admitted it. He was like really, really upset that he admitted that he screwed this up. Which, understandably, Ted's the kind of guy who's not really interested in actually trying to pay people back for things that he screws up or that his company screws up. So when your coworker sits here and screws something like this up and then tells the client, hey, yeah, that's my fault, I screwed it up. You're sitting over there, if you're Ted, ripping your hair out of your head thinking, my gosh, we don't want to pay people for things that we screw up. We want to just take their money, put something together, and then send it out to them and then never talk to them again. That's what our job is here. Our job is not to pay people back for things that we screw up. And then if they call saying that we screwed something up, we find ways to say, hey, that's not our fault. You took it apart. You're the one that broke it. That's how he runs his business. And that's what he did. So it's kind of I don't know. Let me go back to this. So Derelict Robot commented in the thread. So basically all this came about today, like the inspiration to start this thread and this live stream. The inspiration for this came about from a conversation where I accidentally texted a machinist something on Instagram I meant to send to my wife. And he was like, oh, hey, how's it going? I was like, oh, everything's good. Summer's like feeling great. Love the temps out here in Michigan right now. And then something came up with the board that I had built from BKB or BRB. And this dude knows this guy. Like, they know each other. They've worked together. In fact, they were trying to work together on my board, and they got into a big thing. And then they kind of stopped talking to each other during this whole thing. And again, I attribute all of this not necessarily to something that I did, not necessarily something that anybody else in particular did. I attribute a lot of what happened here to Ted's inability to cope with the stress of owning a business and the stress of having to answer to customers and clients. It's not easy. I mean, when you have people calling and texting, like asking for things, where is this? Where is that? It's stressful. A lot of times there's nothing you can immediately do about any of this stuff. But you don't run away from these things and think to yourself like, well, if I just ignore this, if I get a new phone number, if I just leave the state, all this money I took and all of these parts that I got from people that I was going to fix up, well, all this stuff will just disappear. It's just not going to be my problem anymore. If I just leave, if I just get in my car and I go to another state, this stuff this is no longer a problem. That was his strategy. And so maybe it's working for him because he's still MIA. Now, this person mentioned that he had started guilty as charged with this is Chris. This was his coworker dude. Just going to write back. To my knowledge, that never came to fruition due to... So what I said was, to my knowledge, that never came to fruition due to Ted losing his shit right around the time I got my board. Not that it was related directly to my board. That was just one small element, probably to why he lost his shit. But they were working on branding and such right before I got the final text from Ted talking about leaving Colorado and starting a machine shop or something. Ted also made a post on his Facebook about closing this chapter of his life and stepping away from Chris. I put Christ. Funny. There we go. Chris and BRB. Yeah, so in the text messages here, there's a number of times where Ted brings up the new company he wanted to start. Yeah, like for instance here. This is when I was getting him to make the skin that I was going to have on my board. So this is obviously him putting my skin on this thing to print from these people. This is what he was going to make, and I think he was going to make a board for himself. This was going to be the skin he was going to put on it. Guilty as charged. That's Chris's mug shot from, I think, a DUI or something he said that he had gotten. Maybe it was a drunk in public thing. Either way. Where is... Yeah, so he was talking about this. Yeah, here's another one. So he was very, like, I don't know. He tried to be as reassuring as possible during certain events when he wasn't blowing up about stuff. So, but I'd say one of the biggest complaints was that he was not easy to really reliably get in touch with quickly. You know, I would let weeks or so go by before I actually messaged him about things. Let me go to this one part. So... It's actually really important because this is one of the ones that like really made the vibe with this dude take a turn for the worst. Okay, so that's at the very beginning. It was a little ways in. Where was it? Okay, so I think we're getting close. I don't know what these were. I'm guessing those are videos. Yeah, also, what do you think about a custom skin? I know you're already way over budget, but I can cut you a deal as a BRB promotion. He did not cut me a deal. That's one thing for sure here. There was no deal cut. Because pretty sure he charged me what he normally charges for these skins, so there was no deal cut on his side, you know, visibly. And on top of that, what he gave me was absolute garbage. And he never refunded me. So this was not a deal by any means. They were talking about how this is not really a profitable venture doing this type of work because most everything you get in cash goes right out the window because you got to pay the overhead for all these parts and components and things like that. Okay, here we go. So we're talking about the dude that owns Sky Power, who sounds like he's a pretty awesome guy. I've actually spoken to him a couple of other times, specifically about my dealings with this dude. And he was, saying how he does, what do you call it? Custom, what's it called? Anodizing. I was asking for like an army green color. I wanted something that was like OD green or whatever, which they got it. It came out looking really cool. So he's my go-between with 3DS. I started asking about doing group rides and stuff. Can't find anyone else to ride with. Riding by yourself's better than anyone, man. Blah, blah, blah. Definitely don't hate it, but it's awesome when you can share the experience. True, every time I go to a group ride, I come back 6 to 8 more jobs, though. Sometimes I would just like to ride, This may or may not be true. So anyways, I said, so did I mention anything about 3DS anodizing timeline previously? So I was asking, did he ever tell me what the timeline was going to be? Because this was the 10th. This is 5 days later. And I think, as far as I know, we had been talking about the anodizing and SKP and all this stuff like that, because that's who I was going with. Or that's who he was going with. And, he had already shipped these things off to get done, to my knowledge. So that's where this whole conversation was. And so now I'm asking about what's the timeline. It says 4 to 5 weeks. Did we talk about speed controller housings? I know you said you had some. I think you had. So this is June 15th. We were talking about speed controller housing. So we never settled on a speed controller housing until I think August or September. And it was because he seemed to really not be interested in trying to communicate with me about any of this stuff. And then you'll see shortly, this is one of the most kind of insane moments throughout all of this, because this came out of left field. So you can see everything was kind of just cool, hunky-dory here. We're talking about anodizing. June 15th, I'm asking him these questions. This is at 1:15. Look at some Cyber's housings like them. I want to see if they can do a custom top plate for it. It would be dope to get this type of filigree machine engraved into it, which I really wish I could have done something like that on the speed controller housing. The one I got, I think we were able to get from 3D Services, and it still came out really cool. But it was kind of like a last minute thing. There were other options I think we really wanted, but they weren't really available. It's too late to get the Pelican case in OD green. So this is the first time I think I brought up the OD green Pelican case. Maybe I brought it up before. I think I may have shown him. But I'm just trying to get these things considered prior to him ordering them, because I didn't want him to order the part and then me be like, oh, how about we do this? And him having already ordered something, sitting there looking at it, and I'm like, well, screw that part. Let's do this other thing. I don't want him spending money that he didn't have to spend on things that we weren't going to use for the job. So I said, not too big of a deal, but if you haven't started, I would 100% prefer that. So 3 days go by. It's June 20th. He has not responded back to any of this stuff. This is a Wednesday at 1 p.m. Normal working hours for most people. Friday, June 17th, before the weekend. Because I think previously I had messaged him on the weekend, just like a real quick question. I wasn't planning to get into a whole conversation with him about anything. But and he had said something very to the point, and I didn't mind it. I was like, yeah, no, I completely understand. About, this isn't a work day. Just don't ask me things on the weekend, basically, is what it was. So, which, by the way, in my business, what I do for my job, I would never tell somebody that. I would never tell somebody calling or texting me on the weekend about a future job, hey, don't call me on the weekend. And that's not necessarily, a sign of anything positive or negative per se. I just don't want to be like that with people that I plan to do work with in the future. It's just to me, it doesn't seem responsible. It doesn't seem intelligent to sit there and talk to people. Like, if you own your own business, the truth of the matter is you really don't have any days off. You know, as if somebody calls you and needs something done and it's your company or your business or whatever the hell it is, you can tell them, fuck off, it's the weekend. By all means, you have every right to do that. But you can only do that so many times before people start looking into other vendors that provide the work that you provide, because nobody wants to deal with that, because a lot of times people need something done on a weekend. A lot of times people they don't even necessarily need something done on a weekend, but they want to be able to call and text real quick to ask the status of something. It takes like 2 seconds to respond and not get a very combative, hostile tone back when, you know, the person they're talking to is like, it's Saturday, fuck off. Like, you're not going to get business for that long if you're just telling people that. I don't know any business owners that are like that. They may not answer their phone. They may not respond to the text or whatever, but they're not going to just cuss somebody out, you know, or tell them like, you know, it's the weekend or whatever. They just ignore it and they get back to them on Monday. And if it comes up on Monday, they say, yeah, I just don't answer business calls, business texts, or whatever on the weekend. So either way, so I'm trying to get this information to him about the speed controller housing and the Pelican case prior to him ordering these things, so that he doesn't make the mistake of ordering something that I don't want and having to return any of it, or, you know, whatever the case may be. You probably just put it in his back stock. It's a Pelican case. He uses them all the time for this stuff. So, any word on that being possible? Super busy, let me know. Also, eventually got in touch with you about a speed controller housing idea you had. So he responds back a day after June 20th on Monday. Now, keep in mind, Friday, I started messaging him on Wednesday, waited 2 days. All these messages were sent within the span of 2 or 3 minutes. Then I left it. Friday, June 17th. It occurs to me, asking about the Pelican case. It's like 2 days after this. And then after the weekend goes by, I message him back on a Monday. Any word on that being possible? I know you're probably super busy, but let me know if I need to send you the cost of the pack in order to make it happen. Also, Phil should have gotten in touch with you about the speed controller housing idea that I would love to see happen as well. Tuesday, day after these last messages. Sorry, man. Do you work 365 days a year? I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, but that negative shit I have coming back to, the negative shit I have come back to after I took 4 days off for my birthday, because I had a special lady friend come out, is unreal. I don't know what he means by this. Is something that weirded me out when I originally got these messages. When I had a special lady friend come out, I haven't heard of anyone refer to a female as a special lady friend since I was a kid, and someone my mom's age was referring to somebody else that way. This is a very old way of talking to me. As I was like, who says that? A special lady friend. It's not his girlfriend. It's not just a friend, because it's a special lady friend. This to me, my brain stuck to this. I was like, what am I looking at? Why is he saying this like this? It seems really old fashioned. Hold on a second. Let me just... messaging this person back. Yeah, so either way, so he talks about his lady friend coming over. The negative shit he came back to is unreal. So I truly would like to know how many people work 365 days a year. I don't ever get a day off, and now I feel like a dick because I took 4 days plus a weekend. I don't think that's very fair. The backlash I have gotten for taking very little time off makes me not want to do this anymore. I mean, that's why I started a business, so I could do hard work and then take a few days off once a year. I have spoken to you about everything about the 3DS process. How do you think you're getting those special colors? Sorry, man. I'm a little heated. If you have talked to Phil and he said yes, then Phil and I can definitely get in touch with you. So basically he was telling me that, like, these are stupid questions. Stop bothering me. So, So I responded back, all right, you won't hear from me anymore. Let me know when you need more money in the info. I didn't even know what to say back because I had already sent this guy so much money. I was nervous about saying anything that was going to set him off even more, because who knows if I would actually get the things that I had paid for in the first place. If I just sent him, like, you know, if I try and talk back to him here, you know, this guy kind of, he has the upper ground. You can just be like, you know what, fuck you. You're not getting any money back. You're not getting your thing, whatever. Because I would be in the exact same boat then as I am now, with an inability to actually do anything. I have no recourse here, you know, so he could have just done that. I did not want to go off on this dude. So a day later, I had spoken to Chris right after this, because I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like, what is up with your dude? Like, why is he? I was like, why is your buddy blowing up like this? Like, there's no reason for this. Like, I wasn't rude to him. I wasn't trying to like hound him about anything in particular. It just seems like all of a sudden he's just losing his mind over this. And so he said, oh, I don't know what exactly is happening. He's upstairs right now with his friend. Like, I don't know what they're doing. And he's been a baby. Like the other thing is his roommate / partner in this, business partner, would shit on this guy over the phone with me repeatedly, because apparently he's that hard to deal with. He's that hard to work with. And he's literally out of his mind. So his buddy, his coworker, is just unloading all this stuff about this guy to me. And I have no idea what to even do at this point. I'm just like, look, I don't know who he's yelling at. I'm not the guy he's like he should be complaining to, because I don't feel like I said or did anything in these text messages that warranted that kind of response. If you think about the fact that, like, nowhere in these messages prior to this does he ever mention anything about going on vacation. So it's not like I knew that he was going to have this time off. It's not like I knew he was going to be with his special lady friend for 4 days and a weekend. You know, it's none of this stuff was news, was knowledgeable. Like, I didn't have knowledge of this stuff, is what I'm saying. I don't think anybody had knowledge of this stuff. None of the vendors he was speaking to on the Eskate forums, people that were looking for parts and work from him, I don't think he told anybody. So for him to be upset that people he was dealing with work-wise, that he was working with, are trying to find out where he's at, because they're waiting for parts and they're waiting for components and they're waiting for things that he's supposed to be doing, and he's nowhere to be found. What does he expect people to do? If you haven't told anyone, I'm on vacation, don't text me. And I don't know what negativity, like, I know now, from what it sounds like, according to other people, the negativity he's talking about is people being upset that he took their shit and didn't give them anything back. That's the negativity he's talking about, is that he took their money, he took their boards, he took their parts, and he never gave them anything in return. So he literally just stole from these people. Whether he would call it that or not, whether anyone else would call it or not. If you're given something with the expectation that you are meant to modify that thing in exchange for cash and then return that item to the person who gave it to you, and you decide to not just keep the item but also keep the cash that you're being paid to modify this item, that is called theft. That is just stealing. And that is what he has been doing repeatedly, according to the forums, to other people. And there's other people here that are kind of in the same state that I was when I was originally dealing with. I think it was this B-Boy Bowser. It seems like he's a pretty nice dude, especially with how he's still willing to give. Upsold me on the yes, he upsold me on the skin. Like, I didn't ask for the skin initially, and he had to ask me 3 or 4 times before I finally settled on the idea of actually putting the skin on the board. And he charged $300 for it. And he also, like, I think he said that part of that charge was meant for frit, and I said no frit because I wanted to put the grip tape on there myself. I had a specific grip tape I wanted to put on. So yeah, he upsold me on the print. So yeah, this B-Boy Bowser dude was, again, he's still being really patient. I want to say that he sent stuff to this guy and never got it back. Maybe I misread that part. Had been stand up, accepted that as okay. Yeah, sent them back. So November, I got 2 decks I sent to get work done last spring. Got them back for carve 22. Sent them back in November due to QC issues with the work. I've had previous work done with Ted, and he's been stand-up. I've accepted that this is okay if I don't get my stuff back based on outside Eskate talks with him. So this is in March. This is a while back. This is a few months back that this conversation was happening. And due to the conversation I was having with this machinist guy, which is what brought this all up today, I just decided to do a quick search to see if I could find his website anymore, which his website's no longer there. I don't know where his website is now. Obviously down because he's not doing this anymore through that company name or through that business name anymore. But yeah, and then I found this thread from Glyphix on the Eskate News Forum, PSA Big Red Sports. So he started this. Can't believe nobody has really made a public outcry yet, but it's come to my attention that this is Ted's account on Eskate News Forum. As being somewhat of a shit cunt. It's not nice to have to write this because at one point I believed Ted to be a reputable vendor, and I have recommended and vouched for him many times. I'm not going to name names or outline details. I'll let people bring their shit forward as they want. But I've seen enough to be convinced that this PSA is warranted. Don't send money or gear to Ted unless you're happy to lose it, which is true. I was lucky to have gotten my stuff. That's really what it comes down to. I think I must have caught him right before he had his full snap, his full break, and at which point he was able to get my board shipped to me. But at that point in time, anything that was wrong with it doesn't matter. It's not his problem anymore because he had already shipped it out and he decided that he was done with this company. So let me refer back to this thing. So, okay, I didn't get done talking about this part. So him blowing up on me. You won't hear from me anymore. So after I said this, I spoke to Chris, his partner, and his partner, I guess, spoke to him. And then he texted me back, bro, I just realized I got you confused with another homie. I apologize for coming at you like that. This other guy has been a royal pain in the ass. I hope you can accept my apologies. Now, I guarantee this other dude that he's talking about is somebody that is in the Eskate News forums that probably has seen this thread. Somebody who has probably, because according to this machinist guy that I've been speaking to about all this, he said that all of this stuff started from a Telegram channel that they were all chatting in. And apparently everyone was blown up because they were trying to get stuff from Ted. And Ted was, hold on a second, Ted was apparently not responding to anybody. Nobody could figure out where he was, what he was doing, or like, you know, he had stuff due to return to everybody. So, either way, so he said it was his bad here. I guess just clicked on the wrong message thread. Legitimately thought you were this guy who's staying to get free stuff out of me because he blew up a used ESC from me. It's a long story. I legitimately do this to help you. Now, again, knowing what I know now, in that this dude likes to, if anything that you get from him breaks, he will tell you that it's your fault. Doesn't matter what it is, or what was wrong with it. If it was like literally a burned up piece of wood that he shipped you in a box, and you open the box up and it was supposed to be a $4,000 Eskate, he would tell you, well, I don't know what to tell you. You took it apart, so it's your fault. That's literally how he would respond. So knowing that now, because it's what he did to me, and he's saying like, oh, I thought you were this guy who blew up an ESC that I sent him that was used. Odds are this dude, because he's saying he wanted to get free stuff, odds are he sent this dude a broken ESC. And this guy that bought this ESC from him very likely was expecting to get a working ESC only to have something that was broken. And he's probably messaging this dude, hey, you should probably send me a working ESC or send me the money I sent you for this ESC back to me. And he's saying, no, it's too late. You know, I already shipped it out. It's not my problem anymore. I don't really care. So also, I'm usually very good about responding. I just had to step away for a bit and leave my phone on the counter. This is not true. He is not very good about responding, especially after all this went down. It seemed the more time that went by after I gave him money, the less inclined he was to respond in a timely fashion. There were periods where it would take him 3-4 days to get back to me after I sent him a question that was pretty pressing to know knowledge about. Like, if I wanted to know, like, hey, he never confirmed a lot of the stuff that I was trying to reaffirm with him here. For instance, the Pelican case color. Like, he never quite clarified if that was the one that he ordered. Now, in the end, he did actually get this stuff ordered properly, but I was never sure if he had the information that I was giving him. I mean, he was still asking me at the end of all this, and I probably brought it up 4 or 5 times, was I goofy or was I regular footed? And I told him repeatedly, and I didn't expect him to write it down and make notes or to be able to recall it off the top of his head. You know, there's like a million people like that in his circle that probably all have different stances. You know, but that kind of stuff, that late, 6 months later, when you're putting this thing together and you're suddenly like, hey, what's your stance again? What's your footing? How do you stand on the board? 6 months after you've been like dealing with this guy, he finally is asking you what your stance is so he can put this thing together. And keep in mind that also it was around the time that I was like, you know what? Don't worry about building it. Just send me the parts that you have and I'll put it together myself. At which point he freaks out and says, okay, we'll get this thing together for you. And this was the state of it before he sent it to me. This is what he sent. You can see the button there. The thing is, I wish I could get a look at where this was mounted down here closer. He really didn't want to get pictures very close to the board. And he also made sure to make like the lighting is not good. You can't really see much of the stuff on here. But it's really only the 2 areas that were really bad were this button. Well, 3 areas. The button, the graphic, and the mounts for the case were what was fucked up. Now, he was definitely in way over his head. I could tell from the moment that he blew up on me because a bunch of people were trying to get a hold of him because he was off for 4 or 5 days, that this was somebody who was not used to working on their own. This is a person who probably needs to have a boss and needs to have a manager to kind of crack the whip on them and tell them they need to get back to work and they need to do things a certain way. And he needs to have a schedule made for him. He's not the kind of person that can manage his own time. Because he did very poorly here. But yeah, so send the final invoice. Something to charge labor and materials and the battery. I haven't charged anything on the install and enclosure setup. I'm pretty easy on that. I didn't see a charge. I think he charged me $300 or $400 for labor, maybe more. All that should have been refunded. There's probably about $1,000 or $1,500. I would say $1,500 of the cost of this thing should be refunded. Will never be refunded, but should be refunded. And again, I guess I'll just say I paid $5,000 for this whole thing. $5,000. And think about the fact that the state of the board when I received it. Let me see. Go back to this.
4th or 5th time. And
I mean, look at these mounting.
before they left.
What do you call it?
That's something.
The mounting inserts being ripped out. So what I ended up doing, I didn't remount it to the case. I used a ratchet strap.
Obviously, that's something.
Here, let me actually. I'll go grab it and show you. You can see it in the back. It's lit up. Hold on, I'll be right back. So you can kind of see. You can kind of see. I had to use a ratchet strap, which is a pretty traditional. Yeah, $5,000 US. But no, I shouldn't have had to do any of this stuff. I shouldn't have had to fix this. I basically took all the mounting components out, and I just ratchet strapped it down. I put my grip tape on it, and here's the thing: like the board. Oh, let me show you the skin underneath. That's upside down. Pay no attention to this. I figured after the skin was nasty, I just threw some lights underneath it. But yeah, so let me throw this back over here. So yeah, $5,000 US, give or take. I don't remember the full total. I think it may have been just over $5,000 or just under. So yeah, I was able to fix the deck. I'm like winded from picking that thing up. It's like 55 pounds. So I was able to fix it with the ratchet strap, which is not what I wanted to do. I had specifically asked if there was a way to mount the board to the deck. Of course, he had said, yeah. Yeah, no, it was not cheap. And the problem, and the reason, or the way he was able to get $5,000 out of me for this is because I was paying in installments for each different thing. I mean, he needed money for each part up front, and I think the first time he brought that up, he's like, oh, I need money for the parts before I do anything. It was kind of stated in a very condescending way. And I understood there's overhead on all this stuff. Like, I don't expect him to front $6,000, $5,000, $3,000 worth of stuff and then expect and hope that the person that's commissioning this stuff to send him the money for it later on. There's no way of knowing, if the person you're dealing with is actually serious about the business that he's doing with you. So, but this was the state that it came in.
And that can be claimed was a...
And then, like I said, where is it? The one thing I don't have any pictures or video of, which maybe I have it somewhere. But yeah, here's how the graphic looked underneath.
Wheels on the ground.
And something very important to keep in mind here is that,
right.
like, you can see, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is. You can see right here, right here, right here, right here. These little bubbles all over the place. Some of the bubbles are nasty. Like, it's disgusting.
Look closer.
See right here? This massive chunky bubble. There's bubbles up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. It's probably not very clear. This is nasty. This is nasty. This is nasty. All these imperfections. $300 I paid for the skin to have put on this.
Imperfections in the skin, bubbles all over the place.
Look at that. Oh my gosh. I need to go up higher with the camera here, but I didn't. I don't want to bring that thing back over here because it's so heavy.
I mean, that looks like a bubble.
Now, keep in mind, the graphic
Popped.
that I had made,
Turn the flash off.
that I had sent him, I was like super proud of when I made it. I was like, oh, look at this. It's going to be freaking dope. This was the graphic I had made that I was like really excited to have put on there. And you can see here, it does actually look pretty neat. I spent probably a solid 2 hours putting this together. No, I designed it. This was my art that I wanted put on there. Oh, it's funny. The good timing asking that. So yeah, this was the graphic that I had originally made that I said I put about 2 hours into it. I didn't hand draw this. I used existing vector images and stuff to put it together. Yeah, so I made the actual graphic for it. This was supposed to be the graphic that was going on there. Now, you can kind of tell that that's what it is, but they put it on upside down. And it looked like ass. Like, so he embossed it. That's one of the things that really annoys me about this, is because I can no longer do what I had originally wanted to do, which was to just throw some vinyl on here and call it a day, because the vinyl, you can just replace it. It gets scratched up. You just throw some new vinyl on it. And I could, in theory, do that here, but the problem is you're still going to see the weirdly oblong shape, because you can see clearly there's the top of the skull here. This line is supposed to be the skull, but the problem is the skull is like right here, and he followed the line out here. It doesn't look right. So imagine that embossing and then just throwing vinyl over top of it. And then what that would look like. You would see this really weird shape underneath it. It would look ridiculous. It's not cool. I don't know. So yeah, the mounts, the graphic being screwed up, and the other thing was that the board would not turn on a day after I received it. And that had to do with the fact that the connectors inside the board were just shot. Like they were broken. The soldering connections behind the RGB button that came with the 100D Stormcore speed controller. And it had to do with the fact that this guy doesn't know what cable management is. He doesn't understand that you can cut the cables to length and resolder them into the bullet connectors or whatever those are called, and then have the lengths be however you like. You can fit them in there much easier if you cut. I had to cut like 3 inches of slack off of every motor winding or every motor cable that came in the speed controller housing. And finally, I was able to get it to a point I had to completely resolder the RGB the RGB button for the actual speed controller. I had to do a lot of work just to get this thing into a state where I could actually ride it. And then the other thing on top of that, 6 months after I'd originally commissioned him to build it, the season was over that I could actually use this thing. I got one ride out of it before I had to put it up for the winter, which to me was one of the most heartbreaking things. I'm just like sitting here stoked about this thing for 4 months, 3 months, and then I'm just completely demoralized. Like, I'm never going to see this thing. I'm not going to be able to actually ride this thing. And that was the case. So like, I never got to ride it like during the actual season that I was supposed to have it. So after all was said and done, I get in touch with him to find out what exactly he planned to do to try and write this. And we get into not really like an argument or anything, but he didn't really seem to want to say much of anything. Yeah, here's a picture I sent him of the the mounts. Nasty. Oh, he sent me a lightly used charger. There's the shipping information. So yeah, his response. Not sure how willing you are to work with me on this because I went through the charge for the skin for it refunded. So this is where I was getting into the problems out of the box. This is everything I had listed to him. Something not a lot of people talk about. Riding time during the season is valuable. Yeah, very much so. I'm in the Midwest, so we got like 4 months to ride, give or take, depending on how much you want to tolerate the cold weather. Then you pretty much got to put this away and bring out the snowboards, which I have back there once the snow comes. And we have a couple small places out here to go snowboarding, which is pretty dope. But again, it's one of those things where I was looking forward to riding this thing. I was thinking it was going to take 3 months tops from original commission date to when I received it. But 3 months in, he was like not even close to being done with this thing. And it took 2 more months or 1 more month for me to finally be like, dude, I need the board now. And then another month for him to finally start saying, yeah, okay, we'll send it. And then another month for me to actually receive it. So, yeah, it was a long time, very frustrating to say the least. And it's a benefit for him because if anything had been wrong with this board, I wouldn't have known about it until I had actually pulled this thing out of winter storage. It would have taken about 6 months for me to even know if there was something wrong with it. Not that it matters because this dude's not going to fix anything for me. Like he's not going to take this thing back. And the one thing he offered was that he would send me the money back for the entire board if I just shipped him back the board. But I had no way of shipping this thing back to him. I would need to make a pallet for this thing. It's freaking heavy. And the box that he sent it in was garbage. It was packed with garbage in it. Like he literally put fast food bags as packing material, shipping material to send this thing to me. Which that's off-putting. You open a box and you find someone's trash in there that was used to keep it from shifting around in the box. That's pretty demoralizing. So yeah. Because that ever ships fast. So the 4th is when he finally, I guess, shipped it out. It arrived on the 8th. Just unboxed, 2 glaring issues, 2 front mounting points in the pack. Not sure how you do with this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and the skin is upside down. Haven't connected a remote to this yet or anything. So I did a couple of things. I took the battery out of the pack because I'm like, if these things are bad, I want to make sure that the battery itself is going to be okay. So this is one thing right here. This frayed balance cable or balance, I think this is a balance wire or ground for the balance wires. I noticed in 2 different spots were frayed, and it's because he did everything he could to shoehorn this pack into that case that I've got on there. Understandably a tight fit. But there was one thing he didn't do that he should have done, which is shaved out. Some of these things have like these ribbing pieces, plastic on the inside of the case. You just have to shave off. I used a, I don't know what they're called, but people that like, they cut wood and stuff with them. They use like fine woodworking tools. I can't remember what they're called. They're like, they almost look like a little pry bar. I used that to shave down the inside so I could get this thing in without the little plastic ribs cutting into the wire. And I taped over this part. I tried to make it as isolated and like clean as humanly possible for getting it back into the pack. So these two spots. And my main questions here, not that I needed a new pack from him, I was like, is this safe to ride and charge? And I still have not heard anything back about the status of this, whether or not this is safe. Most people would probably say, fuck this, I'm sending this back. I did not know what I would even have to do to get this thing shipped back to him, because it would have probably cost me $100 just to get this thing into a box that I could get it to him safely in. And the other thing is, this dude is not sending me $5,000 back. There's no way in hell that he has $5,000 to refund me with. So I was screwed. And I know for a fact he didn't have that money to send back, because he owes way more than that to dozens of other people. I know one person in particular that he owes money to, who said that he still owes his money to. He hasn't paid any of these people back. And the last text message, so this is what he says back to me. Crazy. It worked perfectly before you took everything apart. What is he implying there? He's implying that me opening this thing up, which, by the way, in order for me to get this controller connected to it, I had to open the battery pack. I had to open the speed controller housing to get the receiver connected to the speed controller for the remote. It's physically impossible for me to do anything with this board until I get the speed controller connected to the receiver for the actual remote. That's just all there is to it. So no matter what, I had to get in there. So he's telling me it worked perfectly before you took everything apart. What am I supposed to do with it? So I'm not going to file a claim. I paid with credit card. Well, it was a debit card, so it was direct cash. It was just cash every single time. The reason I'm not going to make a claim is because I did actually receive something. This is more a matter of like quality control, receiving something that was bad or damaged. And if I could get the money from him, I always do. In the future, whenever I order something like this, it's gonna have to be recorded. There's no way in hell I'm going to do another one of these things without recording the entire process of unboxing, just so I can show everybody what it looks like when it comes out of the box. Because anyone looking at this, I just uploaded this video today, and it's from whatever the date was that I was messaging him. November 8th. The video I recorded of that damage that was done was recorded November 8th. But anyone looking at this, well, you just uploaded it today. There's no way that, we could tell. There's no way we would know for a fact that you didn't just record this today and do this, or whatever the case may be. So he can claim that, but he knows for a fact I sent him these pictures of this stuff back in November 8th, right here. So very clearly, like, he knows for a fact that this is not something I would falsify. But yeah, it is still fraudulent. He did not deliver what I had paid for. He delivered me broken ass. Now, the thing is that all the components of this thing are amazing. They're monster components. The Eskate motors, the battery pack itself is nice aside from this damage. I mean, this sucks right here. This really does suck. But the rest of the pack is fantastic. The speed controller, the 100D, hopefully the speed controller is not used, but there's no way for me to know if he gave me a used one or not. And this guy is so sketchy that for all I know, he could have given me one that was in his board that he was just like, oh, I'm going to give him my old one. I'll put a new one in mine. All manner of questions start to rise. Like, what is this dude doing to everybody else's stuff? Is he keeping himself in new parts and just sending everybody his used stuff? There were things on my board that I saw that didn't seem consistent with a brand new item. The motors had a little bit of scuffing on them, but that could have just happened in shipping. Either way, when this stuff happens, you start drawing other things into question. Like, what else has this guy done that's like messed up? So try to work on getting resale. Definitely. So this is where the main thing I wanted from him and Chris was a new deck. That was really it. Because that was the only thing I felt was within their capability to actually follow through on, was to send me a new deck. Because that was the most significantly noticeable issue. A new deck would not have these gouged out holes. It's a 14S8P battery pack. So a new deck wouldn't have these huge gouged out holes from the inserts. And it also would be something I could skin myself. whether I wanted to do a resin job or if I wanted to do just vinyls, which I had originally planned on doing in the first place. So all I wanted was a new deck, and that was not something that they were willing to even send. Well, I spoke to Chris about it, and he said that he was going to try and make it right. Ted, on the other hand, was like, fuck you. Like, I'm not sending you anything, basically. And I can go through all these. I can show you. But he really just did not want to say that any of this was his responsibility. So he goes crazy. It worked perfectly before he took everything apart, implying I broke it. So this is the only industry I have ever been in that people get something and immediately take it apart. Well, I find that hard to believe. But this is also an industry where that's pretty normal. You know, everyone gets their Eskates. You can watch any number of, what do you call it? Like unboxing vids on any number of channels where people actually take their boards apart just to show people what the battery packs look like and things like that. Or they do things to modify them. This is a very, very tinker heavy industry. This hobby is something that's filled with tinkerers. A lot of people like myself who just want to do something with their hands that isn't so overly complicated that they're guaranteed to screw it up. You know, so it's almost like building a model airplane or something. You know, a lot of places insert, you know, flap A into slot B or whatever the case may be. It's all pretty simple to put together. It says, if you would like to send it back, I will refund you. Now, this is a very loaded and kind of, in my opinion, this is not something he had actually figured I would take him up on. And he was right, because I didn't want to take him up on it. I had a very strong feeling at this point that I would not get my money back if I shipped him this thing. I had a very strong feeling that what I would get was a big old fuck off the moment he received it. And I said, hey, okay, so where's my $5,000? He would just be like, I don't know where you're going to get $5,000 from. I don't have $5,000. I have a very strong feeling that's basically what would have happened. So, however, everything worked perfectly when it left. So if something is ruined, I will have to deduct it from the total refund. I will never understand why people have to tear everything apart. That definitely would void any warranty on any other product. So what he's telling me here is, since it worked when it left his factory, his warehouse, wherever he does this stuff, since it worked when he left there, if it's broken when he gets it, he's deducting it from the total of the refund. So he's creating this window of, yeah, you can send it back to me and I'll refund you, but there's no guarantees that you'll actually get everything that you spent me money-wise. You may or may not get a refund for the full amount. That's him setting this up for that. Literally, what he's doing here. I said, so the board came out of the shipping container with 2 inserts completely ripped out of the deck. The skin was upside down and done objectively poorly, even according to Chris, who's the person that did it. It's physically impossible for me to do anything with the board without opening the speed controller housing in order to install the receiver. I was able to fix the power issue. One of the wires from the button broke when I was reinstalling the top lid to the speed controller housing. I had to resolder one of the wires behind the button. There was actually more than one of the wires I had to resolder. I had to resolder 3 or 4 of the buttons, but at this point in time, I think I'm just trying to get this out to him. I had to resolder one of the wires behind the button. At least 2 other wires that control RGB on the button are also broke. Okay, so I do mention it there. So I have to resolder those. I removed the pack off the deck because the mounting screws are under the battery, which is true. You cannot get to the mounting screws without taking the battery pack out. So that's the other thing. If I wanted to fix this board and make it writable and have it in a condition where it wasn't an absolute just shelf piece, I had to take the battery pack out. So I removed the pack off the deck because the battery was discovered. Which is when I discovered the fray wire. I do not want a refund for the entire board. I just want a replacement deck and a refund for the skin. I was able to work through the issues I had with the transmitter with Chris. So a lot of the problems I had out of the box are problems I should not have had for the money that I spent. And this guy was not going to do anything to actually write these things, you know. But I had to fix a lot of things. And the one thing I can't fix is the deck. I still can't fix the deck. Outside of just trying to sand everything off of it, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe there's some way to peel all the resin off or something. I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just buy a new Harrow and then just deal with it then, put a new skin on that. So I just wanted the skin refunded. I wanted a new deck. It said I was able to work through the issue with Chris. Whatever caused the wires to break when I reinstalled the speed controller housing has to do with the tight confines of the housing itself. Like, at this point, I'm still just trying to be somewhat willing to not say, you fucked all this up. I can replace the deck. Yeah, I can buy a new one. I'm not really sure if it's worth it. Those decks are like $300. In the state that it's in, I'm not happy about it, but I hate this expression, but it is what it is at this point, and I'm just going to ride on it until I decide that can I replace the deck? Oh, you retracted that. Okay. Either way, so whatever caused the wires to break when I reinstalled the speaker controller housing has to do with the tight confines of the housing itself. The first time opening the housing, the RGB was flickering, which I knew right away was some sort of intermittent loose connection issue. So before I had even opened the speaker controller housing, there was very clearly an issue with the wiring to the button that turns the board on and off. So I had diagnosed and fixed that issue. As far as the frayed battery wire, I still would like to know if it's something I should be concerned about, or if it's just throwing some tape, or if just throwing some tape on it will be sufficient. So he says back, yeah, I'm not impressed with the design of the housing whatsoever. So again, he's trying to not say that he screwed up the internals of putting the speed controller in and the wiring, the wire management. He's saying it's the design of the housing that is bad. Unfortunately, it's not my design, he says. You are the last customer of BRB. Turns out doing things for free doesn't make any money. I certainly didn't have anything done for free. That's one thing I will say right here. I paid $5,000 and this is what I got. I did not get anything for free. I'm closing the doors. I started this out of passion, but there has never been any money in what I do, which was a discussion him and I had previously. We had talked about how there's so much overhead costs in trying to build these things that unless you're a manufacturer of the components, like unless you're the one that makes the motors or you can get them wholesale from some Chinese manufacturer, and that's not what he's doing. He's getting like really nice motors from Skyart Power. He's using like pretty phenomenal speed controllers from Stormcore, 3D Cervezas components. Like the trucks on this thing alone were like the second most expensive. I think they were like $1,200, $1,300 for the trucks and the gearing. What do you call it? In the gear drives. So these are expensive components, and he claims to have been providing them at a discount. Let me. That's. Plug my phone in. So he's claiming to provide these things at a discount. He's saying that he's saving me money, but that very clearly was not the case in the end. So, and I just told him, like, I don't see why anyone would continue to do this for so long. It just seems like it's not a very profitable venture, and come to find out it's not. So he says, I apologize. Like I said, I really like that board personally, which I like the components of the board. I love the 3D Services trucks. The gear drives are phenomenal. They sound amazing. The motors from SKP are beautiful. The 3D Services speed controller, all the components are awesome except for the deck and how the battery pack was mounted. So like the main things that his company were responsible for actually doing were screwed up. Everything else I could have done myself. Like I could have mounted. In fact, I found a better way to mount it to the deck that wasn't going to actually cause damage to the board, which is just use a ratchet strap. But I didn't want to have to do that because I felt like that was just an extra part that was ridiculous that most people do because they can't get somebody to mount them to the board for them. So either way, he says he really likes the board. If you want to return it, I will refund you. No, he won't. Business has not been great, as you can understand, doing things for free. So I am moving across the country to work for a private contractor. I said, I'm sorry to hear about BRB. I think this is, so at this point, I'm like fucking bitter. Like I'm pissed because he's just telling me, I don't care. I'm not doing anything more. So I'm sorry to hear about BRB. I think we had a discussion about the overhead of trying to run a business like that. Outside of in-house manufacturing of the major components like trucks, motors, and decks, I just can't see there being any way to make major money unless one were to find a way to be a major international supplier in fast time. I love the shape and flex of the deck, but the botched skin and ripped inserts are the only things that I can't live with on this setup. I would even try to fix the inserts and just throw vinyl on the deck like I had originally wanted to do, but the skull on the bottom is embossed, so it will stick out even after wrapping it, which wouldn't be all that bad, but whatever was used to emboss the skull isn't perfectly cut, so the shape of after wrapping will be unrecognizable as a skull, which is true. It's the guy that cut it out looked like he was a third grader with a pair of Fiskar scissors. So I said I really didn't want to return the whole thing after getting the pack off. Or I really did want to return the whole thing after getting the pack off the deck and finding the exposed wire. I honestly don't think that there's something you that's something you would have even noticed, because it's obviously a byproduct of how tight the Pelican was. And the internal ribbing, or whatever those small ridges are that stick on the outs or stick out inside the case, are exactly where the wire insulation was split open. So it's obvious those ripped the insulation open, which is true, but it's something he should have noticed. It's something he should have actually been able to recognize and avoid by doing what I had done, which is to shave them down so you don't have to worry about them. But he didn't do that. It's obviously, I used a wood chisel. That's what it was. A wood chisel, and shaved 2 of the ribs off, and I'm planning to shave the other ones too. So I shaved them all off after this conversation. Got it in. It's good to go. No longer has any issues with fraying and stuff like that on the wires. So I said, I do want to return the whole board though, or I do not want to return the whole board though. Just replace the deck if you have one immediately. And I would like a refund for the skin job. If you don't have a new deck available, then a refund for the deck and skin would work as well. That would have been $600. He would have owed me $600 to refund all that stuff. Let me see. Okay. And like I said before, I'll send the current deck back, which I had every intention of doing. But I would like the new deck sent first so I can transfer everything over and then send this deck back in the box you ship the new one in. So at this point, I have zero trust in this guy. Like, I have no faith that he is going to follow through on doing anything for me. And he very clearly was not intending to. So he responds back 2 days later. Well, okay. So this was, what day was this? This was the 9th when all this got written out. On the 10th, I said, please let me know soon. I was talking about refunding the deck. On the 12th, 2 days later, he responds, I have had a mental break, man. The shop is shifting. I'm translating things to Moab. I don't know what that means. He's talking about Moab, Utah, but translating things, I don't really know what he means by translating. Sorry, man. I really do apologize. I guess I was never fit for this life. I always wanted to be a creator, and I guess I just chose the wrong line of work. Please give me a week or so to get to Moab and settled in, and then we can talk business, yeah? I'm hoping things will be better in Moab with Big Red's boards and brews. I'm assuming he is implying that, I don't know, they're going to get into, like, brewing beer, too, or something? I don't know. That, or he means he's going to go to Moab, reopen Big Red's boards, and just get drunk. One of those situations. I'm not really entirely sure what he's talking about. He sends me a picture, random, of this thing in front of his shoe. I don't know. He says, machining is on the horizon, and I want to pay back everyone that thinks that I've done them wrong. I don't think most people understand that I'm just a normal dude trying to make something out of nothing. I think that's everyone he's describing, basically. Anybody who owns a business is just a normal person who just found a way to own a business. They've found a way to build or provide a service that people desire. That's it. It's not like owning a business makes you a weird person who's better than anybody, or a person who's like on a different level who can afford to do all sorts of crazy different things. So he says, I don't want to get into arguments about how I did things because everything I personally had control over shipped out good. Well, we can clearly see that is not true. It is unfortunately when customers feel like they have to dissect everything or every component, which obviously leads to problems. This never happens in any other industry. Again, this is a hobby that involves tinkering. Everything has to be modified in some way to be workable. Most people don't expect to have to modify a $5,000 board right after they receive it in order to get it running, but that's what I had to do. It was not issues that I created that caused this thing to be not running. Like, this thing came out of the box fucked up, like clearly in that picture of those mounts ripped out, and he never really acknowledges those mounts. Like, he doesn't really say anything about it. Like, he ignores the main issue, which was getting a new deck and getting refunded for the skin. And really, at this point, if he had just sent me a new deck, it probably would have been cool. I'd been like, all right, fine. At least he did something. But he didn't even send a new deck. Certainly didn't refund me for the screwed up skin job. This never happens in the industry. Have you ever bought a fridge and taken it apart? Well, fridges are not hobbyist items. Fridges are not things that people ride. Fridges are not something that someone orders and thinks to themselves, how can I make this more fridgy? How can I make this a stronger refrigerator? How can I make this a faster refrigerator? That nobody buys a kitchen item and thinks to themselves, how can I make, unless it's like so I don't know. Like, I'm sure people have watched, what was it, Tim the Tool Man show back in the day where he modified everything he bought. Everything had to be faster, stronger, most people don't actually get that crazy when it comes to things like a fridge. People do get that crazy when it comes to something like a motorcycle or a scooter or a electric skateboard. They want to see what parts can be modified, what parts can be made better. In my case, I wasn't trying to do that because everything I had put on it was basically as good as it gets. I was trying to look at the things that were broken out of the box. And his response was, well, because you looked at it, it broke. So it says, because of the DIY aspect of this industry, it makes it very hard. Yeah, exactly. The fridge is not keeping you alive going quick. So he goes, because of the DIY aspect of this, it makes it very hard to warranty my work, which I'm very proud of. I'm currently seeking partners who can accommodate or expand on these goals. Well, it's because the guy that you had as your partner, you basically threw under the bus for all your problems. And he probably was not willing to continue working with you, if I had to guess. Says, if you want to get to brass tacks, man, I'm just a fuck up that knows how to make batteries good. So my response to him later on in the day, 3:10. This is 5 in the morning. I'm assuming this is from a long night, not an early morning, that he's responding to me. I said, all I know is I spent $5,000 for a bunch of really nice parts and a screwed up deck. If you have a new deck available to ship as soon as possible to replace the one that arrived damaged with a botched skin job that Chris himself admitted he messed up, awesome. We can move on from this, and I can explain in the review that you guys did everything you could to make sure that your customers receive exactly what they paid for. If you don't want to address the botched skin job and poorly installed pack mount inserts, I guess I'm just boned on this whole thing, and all I can do is be honest in the review, which, let's be honest, will probably have nearly no long-term negative effects on you or your brand, so you don't really stand to lose much by ghosting me on this, which is true. I've only got 4 people watching this right now. One of them is me. I don't know who the other 3 people. I think this dude was my age. He may even be a touch older. I'm not 100%. But yeah, so I've only got maybe 3 other people watching besides myself. And one of them is probably somebody that I know who isn't related to the Eskate stuff. It's probably a friend of mine. So there's 2 people watching this. It's not like this is going to have profound like waves going into the future affecting this guy. There's only so much I can do. I will leave this up. People can refer back to it. They can check it out later, which I hope people do. I hope people go to this thread. There you go, regular Michael, you too. So like, I hope other people in the future come back to this and see why this guy is so pissed about what he got from this guy. And they will also see the same thread where other people have stated that they just did not get anything back from this guy. They sent him boards that he's sitting on still, that his partner's sitting on. Who knows who's sitting on this stuff? So yeah, anyways, continuing with what I said. If you don't want to address the botched skin job, blah, 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 probably nearly no long-term effect on you or your brand, so you don't really stand too much to lose by ghosting me on this. So your whole response to me, or I said, I continue. Your whole response to me doesn't read like you're willing to take responsibility for a product that you and your prior business partner are allowed to leave the shop in piss poor shape after sitting on it for 5 months. Instead, I see a lot of finger pointing over things that are completely unrelated to the one thing that I want addressed, which is the deck. Yeah. I'm totally glad to share this story. I hope anybody else who has had bad experiences with this guy sees this. I hope a lawyer tried to do business with this dude and sees this and realizes that there's a pretty decent class action. The problem is there's nothing we can get out of this guy. Like there's no money to be gained from this dude. He is poor. He is broke. And I know for a fact, because of what other people who know him have stated, he has a severe substance abuse problem. Again, finding this stuff out after I'd already sent him the money. If I had known that this dude was basically a crackhead, I would not have sent him my money. And there's nothing wrong with doing like smoking some weed here and there. I don't really care. What I care about is if you're going to take my money for something that I'm paying you to build because you're a builder of something, that I get back the thing that I paid for in a condition that you stated it was going to be in, not sending me a turd and charging me $5,000 for it. And again, this thing isn't a total turd. It's mainly the things that he had control over that were the most screwed up. That's really what it comes down to. So I see a lot of finger pointing over things that are completely unrelated to the one thing that I want addressed, which is the deck. I can't force you to make good on this. I can only show you what I received, point out the glaring faults, and hope that you can try to be an honorable builder and business owner by replacing the screwed up deck. I was incredibly patient for months, waiting for updates and holding off on sending you a whole bunch of questions and requests unless I had something that absolutely needed to be addressed. I really wasn't comfortable messaging you at all after you lashed out at me for something I had zero association with. That was him blowing up on me because I guess there was that Telegram chat room. Everyone was I guess, going nuts because no one could find him, and he owed everyone a bunch of stuff. So I had nothing to do with this Telegram chat room, but I was one of the people he blew up on, unrelated, and he admitted that I had nothing to do with it later on. Last item or something I had zero association with. Throughout the entire duration of this build, I was unreasonably polite to you in the face of constant ghosting and disregard for my questions and concerns. If you cared about your reputation or had pride in your product/brand, a new deck would have been sent out the door immediately after I sent photos of the damaged and bad skin job. Instead, you chose to deflect responsibility by blaming me for disassembling the board in order to install the receiver and prevent the broken inserts from causing any further damage if I wanted to actually ride the damn thing. The push button start being broken was absolutely caused by poor assembly. What was your response? I hate that housing. It wasn't my design. The ESC housing is going to be the subject to immediate serviceability, especially given the fact that you knew I was going to install my own receiver. Half the solder joints behind the button were broken or work hardened to the point that they were all ready to break. I had to resolder all of the connections on that switch on a board I paid $5,000 for just to get it in rideable condition. That doesn't, and that isn't even a problem I want resolved, since I already resolved it myself. The entire pack would have ripped off the deck due to only being attached by two mostly uncompromised mount inserts. But you're okay with that. In order to get the board into rideable condition, I had to remove the pack from the Pelican in order to remove the bolts to strap it down to the deck without damaging the deck any further. In order for the board to be in rideable condition, I had to install a receiver in the ESC housing. Your complaints about customers dissecting your work is completely baseless in this specific scenario, because dissection was completely necessary just to get it on the road. Again, if you want to make this right, please ship a new deck on Monday and refund me for $300 skin plus frit. I said I didn't want frit. You didn't install frit. Frit was still billed. And I'll ship this deck right back to you as soon as the new deck arrives. If you don't have a new deck, I'll gladly accept a refund amount of $620, and I'll ship the old deck back to you as soon as I receive a new one from Harrow, Apex, or whoever I choose to order it from. If you do not want to fix this issue, then we'll just leave it at your own words, and if in your final statement from your previous text chain, him calling himself a fuck up, because there's literally nothing else I can do at this point except tell you that your own words about yourself are absolutely correct. If you don't want to take responsibility for the main issue at hand, which is the deck, that was the very last thing that was sent in this chain, and that was November 12th of 2022. So that was my experience. I think, it says I've been on here for 107 minutes discussing this. I did not plan to go this long, but that was pretty much it. I'm going to leave this on my site for people to refer to. Somebody that I was speaking to previously had messaged Chris. Who knows? He might even be in here watching this. If he saw the thread, he's probably watching. He's probably the other person watching this video. Now, there's 5 people in here. And he's probably not saying anything. And I'm going to be honest. Chris is way easier to work with than Ted. Chris still fucked up his part of the board. He fucked up the skin on it real bad. And he said that he was going to send me a new skin. And not a new skin, but a new deck. And he never did. So I don't know. There's nothing really I plan to get out of this. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago. This whole thing has been the only reason, again, I'll say it again for those here now. The only reason I'm bringing this up now is because this whole thing came up in an accidental conversation with a machinist I had dealt with previously for other parts for other boards. Let me turn this back up. Seems like so it kind of came up offhand, and then I went to search for Big Red's boards to see if the company was still around, and they're not. Their website's not up anymore. His account still exists on that Esk8 Forum site, but he's probably not logged into it. It says he hasn't been on there for a year almost, I think. So in the process of trying to find his website, I found that thread from Glyphix calling him out. And I mean, it just sucks. There's no justice anymore. Justice in this case would have been just getting a new deck. That would have been justice. I can afford to buy a new deck. I can afford to get a new deck, reskin it, and just throw this old deck away if I wanted to. That's not, I mean, there's a principle issue here, which is that this dude took thousands of dollars and shipped me something that was ass, basically. Yeah, so hopefully he doesn't. I guess the big thing I want to get out in all this, the big point that I want to make is Ted Christensen, if he opens another business, is not to be trusted for anything. Anything. If you find out, like if there's some other new company that opens up, it's Big Blues Boards or whatever, BBB or whatever, like whatever the case is, and you find out that this Ted Christensen dude is the new, quote, CEO or whatever of this new builder manufacturer company, run away. Don't give this person your money. Yeah, it's not a big community. I mean, it's getting bigger by the day. And I don't think there's any way for him to build it. You know, it's funny because I had a conversation with throughout the time that I dealt with him and I had a couple conversations. And one of them had to do with reputation. And the point that I made to him is it takes a second to destroy your reputation that took years to build. And he was like, "Oh, I don't think that's true." And like his point was that, his work will speak for itself. The problem is that's true. His work does speak for itself. This is very clearly a very clear message that his work sends, which is that he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't give a shit about his customers. He doesn't give a shit about providing a decent product. As soon as things get a little hairy, he runs. That's what happens. And that's what happened here. So, yeah, I don't know. Like my fear before starting this stream was that this dude would show up to my house if I came out about this, if I started complaining. I was reassured by a pretty, reliable source that he doesn't have the money to do that, to just show up. He's out in Utah, which is forever away. I mean, he could steal a car and drive hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Sounds like the dude does meth, so who knows? He could be here this time tomorrow. If he hits the pipe hard and gets behind the wheel, I could be getting a knock on my door at midnight tomorrow, and it could be him. But from what I understand, the guy just doesn't have the money to just travel like that to be able to come out and do something. And it would not be a cool situation for anybody involved if that were to happen. But really, I just want to make sure that everyone knows his name. I want to make sure everyone knows what his company used to be called and what it may be called again if he decides to try and do this again. But a sane person having gone through this, it being in his position, would be so embarrassed, would be so uncomfortable by the thought of failing this bad again, that the likelihood of him starting another business like this is non-existent. It just isn't going to happen. So that if that's the case, then there really is no point to me making this video other than just vent, which I've been wanting to vent for a while. I want people to know the risks of dealing with these vendors. And it's not like there's a lot of vendors that are really, really good people. Almost all of them on the Eskate news forums. You can find out which ones are bad pretty quick if you look into it. This guy basically doesn't even exist anymore. But the red flags I should have seen early on were that this guy, when I first started dealing with him, was just a battery pack builder initially. That's all I had understood. And then he sold himself as a full unit builder. And hindsight being 2020, these are things that, looking back, I wished I had known in advance, that I could have caught on to in advance. And it didn't occur to me at the time dealing with him. So other than that, I'm not really sure what else to get into. Anyone watching, if you guys have any questions, anything else you would like to know about with this situation, feel free to ask. I think I'm going to play some Diablo in a minute. You guys probably don't want to stick around for that. If you do, cool. If not, whatever. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask real quick. And other than that, I think I'm pretty much done venting about this. And I may make a more in-depth review in the future with specific things, like this whole text thread with him. Like I said, him blowing up on me is one of the most like bizarre things in the world that I just never really quite figured out, like how how he made the mistake of thinking I was somebody else. And I don't think he made that mistake. I think that he really, yeah, man, I appreciate you guys tuning in to actually hear it. It's, I like the live stream format. I can actually go on and on and on about something. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Not that anything was to be learned from this, but if there is anything to be learned, I hope you guys took something away from it. Just be extra skeptical of people that sell shit. Like this is by far one of the worst experiences I've ever had buying anything that I was involved with hobbyist wise. Yeah, this is the part where he blew up on me. And so just to kind of show you the dates, last thing, because I cannot reiterate this enough. 6 months. It took 6 months. June 4th, 2022 is when I first reached out to this guy. And I think actually it was like a day before this. I reached out to him on, I think it was Facebook or Instagram. Yeah. No, the new deck would literally resolve almost everything. Because that's really the biggest issue. That's the biggest problem, that I can't just fix myself by like scraping it off the old deck. It would look like complete horrible crap if I did that. The $300, I mean, the $300 comes from the fact that I paid him to put that skin on the deck, plus the price of the deck, which was $300. So I mean, the whole thing I would love refunded for $600. It's like 620, I think, is what the whole total of all that was. The dude's not going to give me anything. That's the thing. Like, I'm not getting anything from this guy. He may or may not ever watch this video. If he did, he probably would just cuss me out in the comments. He'd probably find some other means to like hurt me without actually having to drive anywhere. But for the most part, I don't expect what he did wrong to ever get fixed, because I don't think the guy is capable of following through like that. But yeah, so June 4th of 2022 is when I first reached out to him, the day before on Facebook or something. And then let's go all the way down. November 8th of 2022 is when I received the board. So yeah, think about that. Almost 6 months. Maybe it was 6 months. I don't know. My brain with the math, not good. That's how long it took to receive. And for the last 2 months of that was me kind of like just in a very wishy-washy way being like, dude, just send me my parts. So absolutely a pain in the butt. I do not recommend. In fact, actually, I would say to anyone out there, final point, do not have these builders build your stuff. Like, do not have a battery pack builder build your board. Build the board yourself. Because then you can even call it literally a DIY. I can't even call mine technically a DIY. I call it like a custom commission, whatever the case may be. You know, there are a lot of people that are into the minutia of these types of things where they think it's cooler to say that, well, I built my board from the ground up with my own bare hands and I got all the parts, put it together. And to be honest, it is cooler to do that. But what I did, I mean, I literally could have done all that. The only reason I didn't do it is because the guy talked me out of just getting the parts and building it myself. So, but I would say if you're trying to get a battery pack built and you're talking to the battery pack builder and they're like, hey, I can build the whole thing for you. Just send me the money and I'll build it. Don't. Just send them the money for the battery pack. Say thanks, but no thanks. Just send me the pack. I'll get my parts and I'll put this together myself. Don't ever have a battery pack builder build the board for you. Buy all the parts, have them all shipped to your house. I would say even diversify who you're buying these things from. Don't even buy them all from the same source. Because if you buy everything from the same source and it's not at your house all at one time, and that one source turns out to be absolute garbage, like this dude, you may not get anything. But if you buy it from different sources, you may have one source that sucks. You may have no sources that suck. Then you just put it all together. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, the parts that I ordered for this thing, I mean, the trucks. Let me show you the trucks that are on here. It's the finality channel drives. Man, that purple is really pretty. Or is that pink? But these are the channels, the finality channels. And this is the custom anodizing. So now this dude offers it on his website. Back when I got this, he didn't have the portal to just order these things colored. So where are they? There it is. Finality AT drive. Cray Hyper truck. Finality channel trucks. Go to the vendors directly for each part. Correct. Yeah, for sure. Now the only thing with SKP, and I'm sure well, I know for a fact he's a great guy. I talked to him a couple of times, and he just was like blown away by how bad this situation was when I was originally explaining it to him, because he had gotten the impression that this dude was a good guy when he dealt with him in the past. But the dude at SKP, I know his motors are monsters, which I have the 1670s. I can't remember the names, the sizes. These motors on here are absolute monsters. But yeah, so these are the trucks, the finality channels that I have on my board. Let me see, diameter gear ratio. I think, yeah, I have the 1.5s. So they are the lower gear ratio. A lot of torque coming out of this. And I have 9-inch wheels on it. MBS mud tires on that thing. These things are amazing. You see these things in person, they are just absolute monsters. It's kind of wild. The only problem is I have trouble balancing the tires, the wheels. That's probably the biggest issue I have. Usually you need them to be able to free spin fairly loosely. Nice, yeah. The SKPs, you can't really go wrong with SKP. But yeah, that's the only issue, is getting these balanced. Around 32 miles per hour, I get some hardcore vibration from the tires. And I assume that's just from the Schrader, and I just have to throw some weights on the opposite side or something. But it's hard to get like a real accurate balance with these because they do not free spin very well. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Once you see them in person, you'll know. But yeah, other than that, these are absolute monsters. And then Skyart Power, and this dude, I don't even know if my motors are on here anymore. I think they're like 6385s or what I have. So this is fairly close. Although mine, he called them the Juice. I don't know if they even exist and they're called that anymore. Look at these bad boys. 7490s. These are monsters. So, yeah. You cannot really go wrong with SKP, dude. SKP stuff. They're just good. So, yeah, these are the motors. And then I have the Stormcore 100D, which I think is sold by LaCroix. Yeah, $450 for that Stormcore 100DX, expecting new batch. They're not easy to come by, especially according to him. He was saying that they're really rare at the time. But it sounds like they drop ship or something, I guess. So, what else? What other stuff? The speed controller housing. So I don't see the cases. Here we go. This is the speed controller housing that I have. It's nice. It's very nice. It feels nice. It is a little small on the inside, but I mean, again, that's where cable management comes in. That's where not being afraid to cut and resolder things comes in. Which I have no fear of. Like, I was able to get it fixed. It's just, it sucks that I even had to do it. So yeah, that's the speed controller housing. I'm trying to think what other stuff. I mean, you can see the pictures that he sent me of it. I pulled it up a little while ago, but yeah, that's what it looks like. Not good pictures. So this is mine on the left. It's a dope looking board if you look at it from about this distance, which is probably why he took pictures this far away from it when he showed me. So, cool. Well, guys, appreciate the views. I think I'm going to end this live stream here because I just want to get to play some Diablo. And I don't want to bother you guys with that because I know that this is pretty much just what you came in to tune in for. Yeah, I got the MBS straps on there as well. The tires are MBS mud tires. I can't remember what. What's it called? The battery. BMS. The BMS that he put in, I can't remember specifically which one it was, but no, I already had one of these. I stopped drinking alcohol like 2 years ago, but but this is like pretty phenomenal. I don't know if you can see or read the. Hold on a second. Oh my God, that's too bright. Can you read it? I don't know. Maybe you can read it. Maybe you can't. Highly recommend if you live somewhere that can actually sell those legally. But yeah. Yeah, it's been great. So far, like I said, after fixing it, it rides pretty well. I will say it is like driving a tank. It's hard to get to turn sharply. It's like I gotta hop on it like to get it to flip around. And there are times because it's like channel trucks that like turning is a little funky on it to start out, but yeah, it's pretty freaking dope aside from the things that he screwed up on it and the fact that I had to put work in to get it to work properly. So, but yeah, man, appreciate it, guys. And yeah, I think that's it. Later.